But let me start off with our first question for today. So both of you talked a lot about, motivation as sort of your key drive of pushing you along your journey. So could you just elaborate more on how you found those sources of journey in the first place? And obviously, if this was not consistent throughout, how did you push yourself to go back along those sources of motivation? And what tips you have for our members as well?
So for me, I think that motivation for me was found through obviously my being able to attend my basketball games. But first of all, I like to elaborate on motivation can help you start, but I think that it would be discipline that would keep you going throughout the whole thing. Because motivation, in my opinion, it's not gonna be there for the whole time. Motivation can be there for you to start, but I think that if you form discipline, which can be done through willpower, strong self control, and strong self control and motivation kind of equal for me discipline. So if you have strong discipline to carry out throughout the whole journey, I think that that's what will keep it going through, and that's what helped me keep going through. I mean, I did not like my process the whole time. I actually sometimes I despised it, but it was my discipline that carried me out through the whole thing. Like I did not have motivation to get up and uh, fit fitness into my school, into my even off school, even off basketball. Like that did not appear every day. So I think it's discipline for me that helped me carry out through my whole journey. So yeah.
For me, I definitely struggled with motivation. And like not everyone's gonna have one moment where they realize like, oh, I kind of need this wellness and recovery in my life. But I definitely did. I'm very fortunate to sort of like have that moment where I decided to commit. Um, but for me, like motivation has just come from like my everyday life and my experiences being ill. Because like if you can't find anything that will give you reason to struggle forward, then you have reasons to like then you can think about like what your life is like while you're ill and if that's really what you want for the rest of your life. And for me, that was the beginning of motivation because I realized I didn't want to spend the rest of my life living the way that I was because that's not really living. That's just like kind of clawing around, surviving. Like that's not it. That's not what I wanted. And then as you like sort of start recovery, I think, and like your recovery and your journey to wellness, I think there's a lot of like just things that will come up for you as motivation. You're like, oh, I'm really enjoying being able to go out with my friends and not have to worry about like food there or whatever. Like I'm really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying being more present. I'm really enjoying like being able to focus. And then that starts to become motivation. And then you start realizing like, oh, I actually, what do I want to do with in my life in the future? And then I thought like college, wanting to become a doctor, wanting to be pre-med, like all those things. And those were motivation as well, because I didn't like, I kind of realized like I can't do what I want to do, like while struggling so much. So I had to get better. And like, yeah, my motivation definitely like the level goes up and down all the time. But the problem, like, and like that's just kind of inevitable. Like you're not always going to be 100%. I want this, and the trick is really to like find a way to get by when you're at like 25% or like even like 10% or like 0%. And for me, like it helps to have reminders of what I want. Like I have a list of reasons to recover. I have like kind of like I don't I would show you, but I have kind of like but I'm like in a hotel right now. I have kind of like a vision board almost of like pictures of my friends, quotes that inspire me, of like, like the word college is written on it in huge letters. And those are like things that motivate me. And I look at that and I think about the intention behind making it. And I just think, yeah, like I still do want this. And I just grit my teeth and do what I have to do to get better and wait for like the motivation to come back in full force because it will eventually come back if you don't backslide. Like you're not going to stay unmotivated forever, but it's just the trick is getting through the moments of unmotivation.
Well, thank you both for your answers to that first one. We actually have a question from one of our audience members. So, if there's someone you know who's displaying symptoms of things like maybe an eating disorder or has unhealthy habits, what's the best way to approach this topic with them, and talk to them about it without being weird? So, I think another way to kind of rephrase this is how can you show support to someone who you think might be going through something similar to what yourself, Ariana, and yourself, Kai, went through? Like, what's one of the best ways that your friends or people around you can show support to you?
How they can show support to you, or how the question is asking if you know there's someone displaying these type of symptoms, what is the best way to approach the topic with them and talk to them about it without being weird. That's hard. I actually have a friend. So I have a friend, a very close friend. We were very competitive at a very young age. So he had very unhealthy habits as well, such as I did, similar to mine. But because we were so competitive at a young age, because I went through my own journey, he wanted to follow the same thing because he wanted to compete with me. So it's not it. It's hard to bring it up without being weird. So because you can't just go out and tell someone that they need to improve themselves, because that if that's not what they want to do, and if that's not what they truly want to do, you can't really tell them to do that, because they have to want it for themselves. You can't. The thing in terms of even what I've learned so far in my life, you have to want what you want. You need to want your success. No one else is going to want it for you. So it's a matter of them doing it themselves. I think it's actually, I think it's a good thing that they should want it themselves rather than you tell them to do it. So if I were you, it'd be hard to understand, hard to do that. But I guess I'd approach it in a way of describing the benefits, I guess. But again, the aspect of you're gonna want to for yourself. So yeah.
I would say, like, if you're trying to approach someone who's struggling, like, timing is essential. First of all, like, you don't want to ask them when they're already stressed out and uncomfortable. Like, you want to find a good time to talk to them and start with that. And once you have kind of an entryway or a moment, just like start off by saying like what you've noticed. Don't add in your own judgment. Don't say like, I don't know, it's really bad that you're doing this. Just say, I noticed that you're doing this. And then maybe say like how it's kind of like your reaction, like say, I'm a little concerned about this and here's why. And maybe like they might not realize what's going on, or they might have like they might know exactly what's happening. And it's just really important to have that open and transparent conversation where you just start off with like what you see and you start off with the facts. Because you can't, I think like early, like when you're talking to someone, you can't put in too much of your own opinion and perception when you're just starting off the conversation. You need to start off with what can't really be denied. And once you've pointed that out, like sort of say like, I'm really concerned about this. Like, who can we talk to like for help? Like, do you like trying to direct them towards the appropriate resources? Because obviously you're not going to be able to solve your friend's problems. You're not going to be able to like, if they have an eating disorder, you're not going to be able to like fix their eating disorder. Like that's not really a thing. But you can direct them towards like a therapist. You can direct them towards a school counselor. You can direct them towards all these resources that are available. And kind of the key is like finding who they're comfortable with. And of course, like you want to ask how you can help them, because each person's journey is so individualized and so different. Like if they need someone to like help remind them why they're doing this, if they need help with motivation, like you can remind them like of all the things that they're trying to get better for, or like all the things that are out there that are worth getting better for. And just, yeah, like I think it really comes down to just having that open and honest conversation about your concerns and what you're seeing, directing them towards resources, and then just supporting them afterwards in any way that you can. And like making sure that you actually ask for like what they need in terms of support.
Great. Thank you so much for both of your answers. So that question was geared towards how you would support others, but in terms of your own support network, I know that there's some barriers for individuals, such as, gaining access to professional resources, gaining access to family members that would be comfortable talking about these situations. So can you talk a little bit about how you kind of fostered your support system and what tips you have for others as well?
Oh yeah. So in my journey, I had my mom. My mom helped me a lot in deciding what foods were like important for you. I didn't really seek any professional support or any like professional advice. More so, I kind of knew, like it was kind of obvious to me what was wrong, what was right. But I think that you should surround yourself with people that can help you. I mean, it could be your friends, it could be your parents, it could be whoever can help you identify what is good and what is bad, I guess. So that's for me. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think like support is going to look different for everyone, but I think it's hard to like do it without any sort of support. And I think everyone can access at least one friend or family member, or find someone who's willing to sort of be their buddy in this. For me, what I did was like I I thought about like, who do I want to help me during this time and who has kind of like the emotional bandwidth to do so. And I reached out to those people and like said, hey, this is what's happening. I feel like I kind of need some help. Are you able to like, and then like say specifically what you're sort of needing? Like for me, it was just I needed someone to talk to sometimes. A lot of times I just needed someone to distract me when I was like struggling. And just sort of like actually people think like, oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to sort of like trouble people with my issues. But the thing is like my friends were already worried and they were really relieved when I admitted that I was struggling and when I admitted that I needed help because they're like, oh my gosh, you're not trying to do this alone, finally. Like, and that actually strengthened our relationships. Like they didn't think I was a burden. I'm really grateful for that. Like they were just glad that I had thought to reach out to them. And they were a little, some of them were like, oh, I'm honored. I'm like, yeah, like I would do the same for you. And I have done the same for a lot of my friends. And it's really just like remembering that vulnerability actually strengthens a lot of your relationships. It makes them more real. It makes them more authentic connections. And I think the hardest part is like taking the first step, like sending out the first text to ask for help. And if you really feel like there's like no friend or family member that you can go to, there's always like free online things. Like there's like a lot of hotlines you can use. There's a lot of like forums. There's a lot of like chat rooms. There's all sorts of resources out there if you're looking for them. And we on Safe Space website, we actually have we have a huge list of resources. We have a running list going for all sorts of different like struggles or situations. And like, I think for me, like what's more helpful has always been like face-to-face interaction with my friends and like some of my family members. But for other people, like if you really don't have access to that, then there's always the free online resources and 24/7 hotlines and all those things.
All right. In the meantime, so there's a lot of stigma that could be perceived with topics relating to the things that you both spoke about. What about like what are some steps that you took to deal with the stigma surrounding any of your wellness journeys?
To deal with those type of things, I think that it's for me it wasn't really I kind of just ignored I ignored the stigma and I just stuck with what I wanted to do. I really didn't care about I just took I think I just didn't really care about the negativity. I just proceeded to go because I think I didn't care about anything else but succeeding. So when you have that much desire, I don't think nothing else matters except for obviously everything else that's essential in life, but not the negativity. That's very unimportant to me at that time. It was very insignificant. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like what Aryan said about like kind of ignoring the negative thoughts and beliefs around what you're struggling with. For me, I'm someone who definitely cares about what other people think. That's something I've always struggled with. And it was really hard for me to like tune out what people were saying or like the judgment or the stigma around seeking help. And that's why for the longest time, I didn't talk to my friends. I didn't talk to my teachers about the help I was needing. Like I just kept it all to myself. But I think for me, like it helped me to deal with stigma by connecting with people who were kind of facing the same thing that I was, like people who also are struggling with recovery and like with wellness, like connecting with those people and like, being able to have a space where you're not going to be judged, being able to have a space where you feel comfortable. Like for me, that's been safe space because a lot of us have had our own mental health challenges. And I was able to connect with a lot of people who are going through similar things. And we were like, yeah, there's stigma, but we don't need to, but it just helped to have like a group of people who are together and trying to ignore that stigma. Like I couldn't have done it alone. And also there's things you can do to kind of feel better about it. Like you can find ways to reduce the stigma. And like some of the ways that you can just do this is sharing your story and like knowing that you're going to be judged for your story, but doing it anyway, because like that's what makes it so important, because there's so many people who will think like we live in a society where people might still think less of you for struggling. But that's not to say that but there's also people who will think more of you for talking about your struggles. And it's important to remember that. And in the end of the day, like, who do you want to be around? Do you want to be around the people who are further stigmatizing mental health and wellness, or do you want to be around the people who are starting to break that stigma? And I think that we can all be people who like start to take down the stigma around mental health issues. And like, that's really what I want to be doing. So for me, it was just kind of like Aryan said, like you have to start tuning out what people are saying, because no one's opinion matters but your own and the people you care about. Maybe like in some cases, like in the end of the day, it comes down to what you want and like what you're trying to do.
Okay, thank you so much for those answers. So one of our attendees is asking, do you think social media helps in any way or make it difficult? And how do you recommend being on social media during a recovery period in either of your journeys?
Yeah. That really depends on social media who you follow. I recently I unfollowed a lot of on social media. I unfollowed like a lot of people who don't help me achieve my success that I want to achieve in the future. So it's a matter of it depends on who you're following and what the feed is on your social media. That's dependable. But what I recommend is follow people or get content that like, motivates you or make you feel better. I think that it's important if you're trying to go on social media, because there's no way of escaping negativity on social media. There's no way. But I think that the best way you can block out of it is follow people or follow platforms that can make you feel better or motivate you. That's my advice.
Yeah, I think social media is definitely like I don't know what the saying would be, but there's like a very positive, beneficial side, and there's also the side that you want to definitely be staying off of because that's just gonna make your issues worse. For me personally, I stayed on social media during my recovery. I'm still on social media because my issues didn't really stem from social media or comparison. But like if the reason why someone's struggling with like their eating habits or struggling with their wellness is because if like social media is playing a role in your illness, then you do need to be off it while you're trying to get better and you need to find a way to use it more healthfully, if at all. But like in my experience, social media has been more helpful because I've been able to connect with other people who are going through recovery. I've been able to follow people who inspire me to get better. And like when I'm feeling unmotivated, I can remember like I'm not in this alone. There are all these people I can connect with over social media about what I'm going through. And also just remembering like social media in no way is a replacement for like the people who you should be connecting with in your life out like in person. I guess you can't really do that right now, but like before and soon now because people are getting vaccinated. Um, like social media is not a substitute for like interactions with your friends and with like your family if that's a good relationship. Um, and like what am I trying to say? Like I think social media, like whether or not you use it in recovery, depends on how you plan on using it. Because if you're using it as a way to like compare yourself to others, as a way to judge yourself, as a way to put yourself down, then you shouldn't be on social media. But if you're using it as a way to like help you and like a way to inspire you and a way to feel less alone, then I see no harm. But it really is a case by case basis. And I would encourage everyone who's kind of questioning it to like further explore why you're questioning it. And like I think deep down we all know whether or not we should be on social media right now. Honestly, from like I think for me, like I knew when I should get off and I knew when I should maybe go on. But I think the hard part is just doing what you know is right.
Okay, once again, thank you both so much for answering these questions. And also thank you so much for presenting in our session today.